right. Well, super. Good morning, everybody. How are you? I can't really see who's here and who is not, so I'm just going to assume that you're all here. Is there a way to see who's here and who's not? I can look at the stage. Super duper. Good. So we'll dive right into diving the Philippines with Atlantis Resorts. And so in these crazy times, really all we can do is dream. There's nothing else that we can do. The only thing that we could do is go over our old dive vacation photos, but nevertheless, now it's a time to dream ahead. And a good dream ahead would be that picture. Wouldn't that be a great dream ahead? So this dream ahead is our current dream, which is the Philippines. This picture is actually taken in Coron Island. The Philippines is an archipelago of 643 islands, even though the Department of Tourism slogan is 7,107. And if you take all that landmass together, put it together, you're going to get a country in the size of Italy. So it's quite a big landmass surrounded by a lot of water. It's a global hotspot for marine biodiversity, and it's located in the northwest side of the Coral Triangle. The Coral Triangle is an imaginary triangle that links 6 aquatic nations together. What makes it so unique are these facts. It's quite big. It's 5.7 million square kilometers of ocean water. And it is home to 60% of the population of reef-building corals in the world, which is about 500 different species, and over 3,000 species of fish. And of course, the Coral Triangle is a habitat for feeding, migrating, breeding, of all the migratory animals. And so dolphins, tunas, barracudas, whale sharks, different types of sharks, this is where we get them all. And so the concept is basically within the Coral Triangle, when you think about it, if you have 70% of the fish population of the world and 65% of the coral population, or the coral species, and all these migratory animals coming in and out, that means that every time we put a mask on our face and put our head in the water, we're going to explode with biodiversity. And that's what makes the Coral Triangle so unique. And of course, Philippines being one of the aquatic nations within the Coral Triangle. And so this is a map of the Philippines. I'm sorry, I'm just going to minimize this for a second, just to come and have a look and see if we are all good with Jason's comments. Yep, and it looks like we are all good. And so this is a map of the Philippines. You can't see all the islands, it's just the major islands. And we've got 3 main areas in the Philippines. We have the northern part here. We've got this area called Palawan and this area called Visayas. Now, these are imaginary division for divers, basically. As you can see here, the Philippines is surrounded by bodies of water. This is the Sulu Sea. Down here, we've got Indonesia and Malaysia. This is actually the Pacific Ocean. Here we've got the the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea, depending who you ask. And here we have the Celebes Sea down here. And so also we are quite in the middle where 2 major ocean currents meet. And one is the North Equatorial Current and the other one is the North Pacific Current. And the Philippines is right on that meeting point between the 2. And so a couple of really famous dive areas will go by region. So now we will talk about this northern region of the Philippines and basically Luzon and Mindoro. This is Luzon, that's the main island or the bigger island, and Manila is located here where you can see my cursor. And in the north part of the Philippines, we have very, very popular dive spots. Anilao, well known for macro and blackwater diving. Puerto Galera, which is across a channel from Anilao. That channel is called the Verde Channel, and within it, in the middle, is the Verde Island. And here you can see the photo here, that's from Verde Island. Basically, it is this channel up here between these 2 islands. And Verde Island has been studied for several years now and is based on a scientific publication last year. It is the most biodiverse point in the Coral Triangle and hence in the entire world. And another thing to keep in mind is that Verde Island is a tiny island. It's a volcanic island. And so the growth of the corals with the richness of the rocks creates an explosion of life. So you're basically diving in these pinnacles that are rising from 200 meters deep all the way to the surface, completely covered with coral and fish and just things happening everywhere. It is absolutely one of my favorite dives. And then the last famous area in the northern part of the Philippines is, of course, Apo Reef, which is a marine park. It's you can't get there with day boats, and hence it makes it quite remote and less accessible to people. And that's where we get quite a lot of sharks and rays. And I want to show you a couple of pictures from these areas. This is Puerto Galera. So you can see here it's a lot of small bays. It is a haven for divers because it's got everything from macro to reef to wide angle to muck areas. It's got everything. There are over 40 dive spots just alongside a bay called Sabang Beach, and that's where we are located at Atlantis Dive Resorts. This is Apo Reef, so again, a marine protected park, about 100 nautical miles 50 nautical miles from the nearest island, and so that's quite further out, and that's why we get a lot of the migratory species and also just a large number of fish. So that is the northern part of the Philippines. As we move back to that skinny island that I was showing you, Palawan. Palawan in its north part's got an island named Coron that is divided into two islands, Coron and Busuanga. Coron is quite famous for shipwrecks. That is where one of the longest battles in the Philippines happened between the US and Japan. And unfortunately for the Japanese, they lost. And hence we've got a lot of sunken wrecks, average length of 120 meters. So they're quite big. Visibility, you guys from the UK would say, oh, that's awesome, but it's only about 10, 15 meters. It's quite murky because they're all in this little bay. Excellent growth over the last 80 years on these corals, clams, and whatnot. So a very interesting dive in terms of light penetration and also macro species on the wrecks. And we've got this amazing crown jewel of Barracuda Lake. This is a landlocked lake with reverse thermoclines, so from cold to warm. It's like a dive from space. You can actually see the thermoclines. That's not the quality of the photo. And and we've got, again, back to that skinny island, we've got to the right of it, you've got Coron and Busuanga up top, and then to the right of it, we have Tubataha. Tubataha is the crown jewel of the open ocean. It is pelagic. It is located 100 nautical miles from the nearest port, and so it's about a 10-hour cruise or sail, depending on the speed of a boat. It is only accessible by liveaboard 13 weeks of the year, and it's everything big. And this is where it's located, quite here, so you can see how far it is from the nearest port of Puerto Princesa. This is the island of Coron up here with the dugongs. And now we will migrate from this area onto the Visayas area, which is a group of 6 islands bundled together with channels that cross between them. Very rich water and basically everything you would want to see, from mackerel to whale sharks to thresher sharks. That's where it is. We've got a couple of famous places. Negros Island has Dauin, the capital of macro diving in the Philippines. It's got Apo Island, which is a marine protected area, the first in the Philippines with beautiful corals. And Sipalay, which is an up-and-coming kind of newish macro area. We've got Cebu, of course, very famous for Moalbol for the sardine run, Malapascua for the thresher sharks, and Oslob for the whale sharks. We've got Bohol with sites like Panglao, Balikasag, Anda, and Cabilao, a combination of walls and macro. And Leyte, south and north, mostly for the migratory whale sharks. And Iloilo is basically an island nobody dives in. And so quite undiscovered, but from what I hear from people going on exploratory dives there, it's quite nice. And Siquijor. This is Negros Island. In Dauin is the town. Negros is divided into 2 different provinces or provincial areas, One of them has black volcanic sand. So this is a lot like Lembe. Basically, we've got beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Hi, John. Yeah, Apo always has turtles. That's correct. Yeah. And so we've got in Dauin, and obviously if you've been to Apo, you've been to Dauin. So this is the sand. What makes it so unique, guys? This is like Lembe. So we've got different craters because of the camouflage. When the sand is darker, you've got different craters. And it is one of the capital of macro diving in the Coral Triangle. It is the capital of frogfish. We've got 7 different species of frogfish, every kind of octopus you can imagine, and really anything macro based on and growing in artificial reefs, little caves, caverns, rocks, and things like that. Apo Island is an area right in front of Negros Oriental, Dauin, the town I was talking about with that black volcanic sand. And it is the longest lasting marine protected area in the Philippines, and it's a community-led project. And so what we get there is incredible healthy reef, over 300 species of corals and 150 species of fish. And so that was like a very, very fast dip in the water of where in the Philippines we can dive. So let's go back. We've got the northern part, Manila and Luzon and Mindoro. Over there, we've got Anilao for the macro, Puerto Galera for macro and reef, for the island right in the middle of the passage between the two, and Apo Reef, a great place going on a liveaboard to see pelagics. Then we've got that little skinny island, Palawan, and the one above it, Coron. So we've got wrecks, we've got dugongs, we have Tubataha, which is that crown jewel, remember, with all the big pelagic stuff in the middle of the Sulu Sea. And so we've got all the migratory species only accessible by liveaboard. Then we have the Visayas area with 6 different islets, easy to get around, anything from macro to thresher sharks to whale sharks. So a great, great, great variety. I recommend that when you come to the Philippines, what you want to look at is an area where you have enough time to cover well. If you're coming for a week, I'd say focus in one place. Just stay there and dive and really see what's happening. If you're coming for a couple of weeks, I'm happy to help you plan something where you could go into different locations and see different things and kind of get a really good mix of what's happening in the Philippines. For me, after working in the Caribbean for 2 years, when I came down to Asia and I went to the Philippines, I was mind blown because of the colors and the diversity and just the different types of animals I've never, ever seen before. And so what kind of diving do we have in the Philippines? Well, like I said, everything, right? We've got blackwater diving in spots like Puerto Galera and Anilao. Basically, blackwater diving means that we go diving, it's a night dive, and we put lights ahead of when the divers come. And so that attracts all the different things from the depth that are coming up to feed, whether it's juveniles, larvae just traveling with the ocean currents or whatnot. So you get a lot of small things. Like, for example, this peacock mantis shrimp, as you can see, it's basically kind of like a juvenile phase, a pre-juvenile phase. It doesn't even have the colors yet. We do a lot of muck diving. What's muck diving? It's basically diving and looking through the sand. So we don't actually have a reef or things like that. It's just rocks and sand. And then we look for small critters like this beautiful jawfish with the babies in its mouth. Flamboyant cuttlefish. Eggs, we got them in 2-month cycle in our Dauin location. Hairy frogfish, and here this is taken in Dauin and Dumaguete, and you can see the dark coarse sand. Pygmy squid, the smallest squid, about 2 millimeters, and the only squid that can turn its head 360 degrees. If you look very carefully at this amazing photo by Todd Winner, you can see the shrimp that the squid ate before. Seahorses, you will see them in abundance. If that's your thing, you're definitely coming to the right place. Different nudibranchs. There are about 2,000 species of nudibranchs in the Philippines. We are also working with quite a really interesting guy from the California Academy of Sciences. His name is Terry Gosliner, and he is a nudibranch guru. That's his thing. And so he comes once a year to study the nudibranchs. If you dig nudibranchs, you want to go up north, Puerto Galera, Anilao, that's where you'd see the most species. And of course, heaps of octopus. We've got blue ring, we've got matoti, we've got coconut octopus, we've got mimics. Yeah, very, very interesting place to see octopus. We do spot them more during September and October, but they are year round. And a mimic octopus is quite an interesting animal to look at because it is one of the only animals in the ocean that doesn't only mimic the shape, but also the behavior of other animals. And so when we're looking at him here, right, he's pretending to be a spearing mantis shrimp. And these are the three common imitations of how he would look like, whether normally a flounder fish, and abandoned sea snakes down here. Pygmy seahorses. And so with pygmy seahorses, we dive into the category of macro diving. And what's the difference between macro and muck? A lot of people ask me that. And so muck is really when you're diving just kind of in the sand, bit over rocks, and only looking for the small stuff. Macro diving is, yes, as well, focusing on the small stuff, but within a reef setting. So for example, pygmy seahorses, they live in Gregorian fans. Heaps of nudibranch, I mean, more than you can imagine. And nudies actually really like walls. And so if you've got a wall dive, that's where we find a lot of the nudies. They are more reclined to live on walls and vegetation versus just on the sand. We've got two mantis shrimp. We've got the peacock, the fastest moving motion in the animal kingdom and the most elaborated eyesight in the entire animal kingdom. And of course, got his less colorful cousin, which is the spearing mantis shrimp. Ornate-ghost pipefish, really by the dozens. I mean, on every single dive, we get the yellow ones, the orange ones, and the black ones. And of course, all of this in colorful and healthy reef setting. One of the key things in the Philippines is that we really don't have bleaching. It's very rare that you would see that. Given the fact that this country was still dynamite fishing up till about 20 years ago, and in some areas even 10 years ago, it is incredible how quickly the reef has recovered. This photo is actually from Puerto Galera, and you can just see the growth on there. And so that tells you a lot about the richness of the water and the nutrition in the water, and hence the growth of that healthy reef after years of exploitation. And of course, we also get big guys. Everybody says, oh, Philippines, it's a lot of macro. No, but we get big guys. We get the thresher sharks. We've got whale sharks. We've got dugongs. Different types of gray reef sharks, white tips, black tips. We get to see hammerheads as well in Tubataha, not in schools like in Socorro, but we do get the occasional ones. Mantas, definitely, Donsol, Tubataha. And so much more to see above water. Philippines is magnificent topside as well, like this incredible waterfall in Siquijor. The water, you can see the color. That's not me playing with anything. This is really the color of the water, rich in minerals, and so they get this turquoise color. A lot of the islands are volcanic, and it's also very, 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 very jungly, and so there's heaps of stuff to see above the water as well. Awesome. So where are we? We've got 7 more minutes. And so I'll go through this quickly. I'm sorry if I speak too fast, but I also want to leave some time for questions and answers. And so I actually failed to do this in the beginning. My name is Roni, and I work for Atlantis Dive Resorts. And Atlantis Dive Resorts and Liveaboards is a company in the Philippines. We've been operating there for 26 years. We operate 2 land-based resorts and Liveaboard. And our resorts are located in the best places in the Philippines, of course. One of them is in Puerto Galera. The other one is in Dauin, in that black volcanic sand area. And our liveaboard goes everywhere. So what makes us special and why should you come dive with us? We are a dedicated dive resort. We're not a resort that also offers tree hugging yoga and some diving. We are dedicated dive resorts. We offer up to 5 guided boat dives per day, 4-day dives, 1-night dives every day, each day, all by boat, all with a guide, no minimum for the boat to go. That's the concept. We dive on speedboats, and so we go out and come back after each dive. We have dedicated camera rooms, very spacious dive shop, and all local guides. This is our camera room in Dauin location. This is our Porto Galera resort, our Dumaguete resort, the Dauin location, again with the black volcanic sand. And that is our liveaboard, Atlantis Dive. Some of you may look at it and go like, ooh, this looks familiar. Yeah, it's a former aggressor. We bought it in 2012, put it back in the water in 2014. She holds 16 passengers, 10 crew. A third of the boat here, as you can see, is the dive deck. We've got a freshwater jacuzzi on top and a lounge area and a couple sun decks. And so she is definitely a ship made for diving and to handle rough seas. She's the only blue water rated private yacht in the Philippines. And so the routes that we do northern routes, middle routes, and southern routes. So we do Upper Reef and Coron Rex. That's a reef and rust 1 week liveaboard trip. You basically do the Rex, we do the Barracuda Lake, we do Upper Reef for the sharks. So it's a great variety of a little bit for everybody. We do Scuba.Digital, that thing in the middle of the Sulu Sea. So that's a week long, and that is 13 weeks out of the year. And then we go down to the Visayas area and do a couple of routes there. One that goes all the way up to Malapascua to dive with the thresher sharks, and one that remains close, what we call the Bohol route. And that is an excellent route for snorkelers as well, if you've got an undiving companion. And also for people who've never been on a liveaboard, because that one stays kind of close to the island, and so people feel a bit more comfortable, versus in Scuba.Digital in the middle of the Sulu Sea, all you see is sea. And so we are here, we're waiting for you. We've got a booth. You're more than welcome to join me there and ask questions and get in touch. And thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hop back into our session and see if there are any questions. Hi, John. Best Flamboyant Cuttlefish in the Philippines. Yes. Scuba.Digital is always at the same time of year. I'm just going to stop the screen sharing here. Scuba.Digital is always the same. It is from mid-March to mid-June, and that is the season. And so, yep, mid-March to mid-June. If you go to our website, atlantishotel.com, I'm going to type it in for you there. You can see the schedule and the availability online. And if you'd like, I'm happy to hop over to the Atlantis booth and we can have a look at availability there. It is absolutely worth it. I was there last year in June. It's the way the ocean should be. Yeah. I don't know if we've got any questions, any other people here. I'm still trying to navigate through this just to see, but it looks like when will we open again? When the Philippines open, when the president decides that he is ready to receive foreigners. At the moment, the Philippines is still closed. And yeah, so once the borders open, we will be right there waiting for all of you to come and dive with us. We have no idea when that's going to happen, unfortunately. But the good news is that the offer we have here on this awesome show, Scuba.Digital, thanks for giving us the opportunity to communicate and connect with people. But once we open, what we do offer is a kind of a flexible voucher. So basically, when you book, if the Philippines is still closed, it's no problem. You can reschedule and you know that you are good to go. And also you can book now and choose your dates later. Once Philippine opens and you say, oh, okay, right, I got that awesome offer that I got from Scuba.Digital, and now I'm ready to make my dates. Super. John, if you'd like, we can go over to the Atlantis booth and chat up there. It looks like you've been to Apple Island, but otherwise you're welcome to join my presentation at 10 a.m. UK time about Apple Island. Thanks a lot.